Hey, what's up my tribe? Balrog here. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. If you want to use frost skills to level up your sorcerer from 1 to 50, this is the build for you. After playing a whole new campaign with a sorcerer's alt, I can tell you with confidence that freeze is freaking broken. You can kill a pack of enemies in a couple of seconds, just like that. 1, 2, boom. It melts elite so fast that it feels like regular mobs. It deals a lot of damage in range, keeping you in a safe distance from enemies, but I gotta be honest, I'm not gonna sell you this build as OP or best of the best with no flaws. It's really powerful, don't get me wrong, but it has one problem: mana regen. But don't worry, there are some skills and attributes that can help with this while you get to level 50 that I will mention on this video. And after level 50 with better gear and the Paragon boards, it gets resolved. So you can even remove skills because your mana flow is so good, and you can invest in more damaging or defensive skills. As always, I will show you the abilities you need, how to play it, and how to set up your skill tree to freeze and destroy every monster quickly on your way to level 50. Game on! The main core of this build is to be able to freeze as many enemies as possible, inducing the vulnerable state to make the most damage possible. In a fantasy world, we would love to spam freeze every time to kill with ease, but that's not the case. While leveling up, freezing uses a chunk of mana and has a medium cooldown. So while you progress to level 50, you gotta learn how to manage it and what skills will benefit you to regenerate your mana faster and reduce those cooldowns. This build, you wanna play it at a distance. The only time you need to be in close or melee range is when you want to freeze a big group of enemies. The rest of the time you can snipe from afar to avoid any damage. Also, you can still freeze from afar using the chilled skill repeatedly. Now let's take a look at the abilities you need to put this mechanic in play. First, there's Frostbolt. When you start leveling up your character, this is going to be your first damage dealer and will apply chill to the enemy, making them move slower, and if hit repeatedly, it will become frozen. Also will be one of the sources of mana regen. Next is the ice shards. This will become your main damage dealer, and mana spender can ricochet to another enemy, dealing great damage. Next is a frost nova. This is the core skill that will freeze enemies around you and able to make them vulnerable for more damage if you invest in that damage source. This is the meat and potatoes of the build. You want to Nova as quickly as possible, hitting the most enemies you can. Next is Ice Armor. This skill will help you with survivability, absorbing damage, and with your mana regen as well. Also helps to deal more damage with skills while it's active. Next is the Teleport. This is the other defensive skill that you need to move out of sticky situations or get into a group of enemies to freeze them. Next is Inferno. This skill will help you moving enemies closer to freeze them and will do burning damage over time, helping you with the mana regen while killing those burning enemies. Now let's take a look at the enchantments you need. First is the Firebolt, so your direct damage applies burning damage over time that can help with mana regen with a skill that I will show you when I talk about the skill tree. The second enchantment is Ice Shards, that will automatically fire ice shards to frozen enemies. So when you use the Nova, you will see Ice Shard hitting the enemies for free. Now when I play, I usually do this cycle. First, Inferno to gather enemies closer if they are apart, but if they are close already, use it after Nova. Second, the Frost Nova to freeze and destroy all that is frozen. Take advantage of the Ice Shard enchantment to get free hits, and then use a couple of Ice Shards and have the explosion finish them off with the Shatter passive. Third is the Ice Armor to get that mana regen going and increase the barrier of your character. And if you got the appropriate legendary attributes, you deal even more damage to frozen enemies when the barrier is active. Fourth is the Frostbolt to mana regen. And when the mana is up and you're still in the cooldowns, you can use Ice Shards again. But when cooldowns are up, just repeat the cycle. So now for the skill tree, on your basic skills, 5 points on Frostbolt, 1 point on Enhanced Frostbolt for a chance to explode on chilled enemies, 1 point on Glinting Frostbolt to generate 4 mana when hitting chilled or frozen enemies, This is one of the skills that I was talking about to help you with the mana regen. And finally, 1 point on Firebolt to get that first enchantment. On core skills, 5 points on Ice Shards. I got 7 here because of an armor attribute. 1 point in Enhanced Ice Shards to have 40% to ricochet to another enemy and always ricochet on frozen enemies. 1 point in Greater Ice Shards to treat enemies as frozen when hit with Ice Shards while their barrier is active. I got this one selected to use when I have my Nova on cooldown and I have to rely on Ice Shards. 1 point in Devastation to actually get to the next node. 3 points in Elemental Dominance so that Ice Shards deal 9% multiplicative increased damage when cast above 50 mana. That's pretty much like half of your mana. On defensive skills, we have a lot going on. 5 points in Frost Nova, 1 point in Enhanced Frost Nova to reduce its cooldown, 1 point in Mystical Frost Nova to make enemies vulnerable. This is where you make most of your hurt if you have invested on damage versus vulnerable. 2 points in Ice Armor, 1 point in Enhanced Ice Armor to help with mana regen. This is another of the skills that you need to use when to help with the mana regen. 1 point in Mystical Ice Armor to make your barrier even better hitting those vulnerable enemies. 1 point in Teleport to get out of trouble or into trouble. 2 points in Elemental Attunement to have a proc of 10% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills when doing a lucky hit. 3 points in Glass Cannon to deal multiplicative increased damage, but remember you take more damage as well. On Conjuration skills, no points. On Mastery skills, no points either. On Ultimate skills, 1 point in Inferno to gather up enemies. 1 point in Prime Inferno to keep pulling enemies to the center of the snake. 3 points in Fury Surge to help with mana regen while killing burning enemies. Remember, this build does burning damage when you direct hit them and with the snake, so this skill is important to help with the mana regen if you kill those burning enemies. 2 points in Permafrost to deal multiplicative damage to elites. 3 points in Hoarfrost to deal multiplicative damage to chilled and frozen enemies. 3 points in Frigid Breeze to generate a bit of mana with a chance of 20% every time you do a lucky hit. Again, this skill will help with the mana regen problem. 3 points in Icy Touch to deal multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies is a big one. And last, 1 point in Shatter to have enemies explode when freeze expires, doing 25% of the damage you made to them. So when leveling up, you're going to change constantly your armor and weapons. I play with staffs and wand and focus. You can try both. Finding a good wand and focus can be a task, but it can open more room to an additional legendary skill, and that can modify how your build works. But playing with staff is also fine while leveling, so be sure to pay attention to the item power of all of your gear instead of the item level, because there are item power tiers that you need to pass to have better roll items drop, like I'm showing you on the screen. So while leveling and when you're close to 50, I recommend you use the following aspects. First is the aspect of control. You can find it in the Sunken Library in Kyrgyzstan. With this, you will deal from 25 to 35% more damage to immobilize, stun, or frozen enemies. Remember that if you use the aspect in your codex, you will get the lower roll. Next is the aspect of the Frozen Wake. That's a legendary aspect. It's a random drop. It leaves behind exploding ice spikes that deal damage and chill enemies while ice armor is active. And Prodigy's aspect, and you can find it in Witchwater in Awizar, and with it, every time you use a cooldown, you will restore from 15 to 25 mana. The aspect of control and Prodigy's aspect is one of my favorites, especially the Prodigy aspect, because it will help you a lot with the mana regen issue. So like I said before, the Frost Nova ability, it feels broken. You can kill enemies and elites so freaking fast, but at the cost of having poor mana regen and maybe a little bit of struggle with boss fights, because you can't freeze them, only stagger them after a while. So once you get to level 50 and start having better gear and use the Paragon boards, this build begins to excel and shine even more. So at the end of the day, it's a great build to level up with great potential past mid-game. Hope this video was helpful to you guys. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any new content like this one. And comment down below if you run a similar build or if you have tried different skills than the ones I used here. I appreciate you all from being here and supporting me. And as always, guys, see ya on the next one. Ciao!